such an honour to be able to speak at such an awesome conference like this. And if WooConf wasn't enough, two of my favourite things are sea otters and Grey's Anatomy. So I am having the best time. So yeah, I'm Laura. I have been working with WordPress for about 7 years now. I'm one of the organisers of WordCamp Brighton, so if you fancy a trip to the UK next August, come along, it's really great. And I'm also the marketing manager at Pragmatic. We're a WordPress agency based in Brighton in the UK. Got a team of 50 of us. You might have met David Lockie yesterday during his breakout session. And we are the WordPress technology partner of choice for several enterprise businesses. This includes Bacardi and their family of brands, PEI Media, and Sage. And it's actually Sage I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be sharing how we used an Agile sort of technique to manage their large CRO project. So first of all, I'm going to be giving you an introduction to CRO, followed by the case for Agile, and then we're going to dig deep into the big brand case study, which is Sage. And finally, a few tips and takeaways. So what is CRO? CRO stands for Conversion Rate Optimization, and it's the practice of increasing conversions on your website, basically. And a conversion can be different for all sorts of businesses. Usually it's like getting a user to place an order, subscribing to your service, or downloading something. And you do this by making incremental changes on an alternative version of a web page that you want to optimize. And most CRO processes look a little bit like this. You'll find lots of these circles on the internet. You start off by analysing data. And this data can be gathered from things like Google Analytics, Hotjar, Crazy Egg, whatever sort of software you're using. And then discuss with the client, match up some potential test ideas to their business objectives, and then we go away and create test plans. Test plans will include hypotheses, some of the test details, like how long it's going to run for, what success looks like, and also they'll include some visual mock-ups of how the test will look and function. These then get designed and built. There's lots of different CRO software out there. We use Optimizely, but there are lots of others. Then we set them to run. And then finally, once the test has finished, we'll look at the results and decide whether we want to implement the test version permanently or not. Now, Sage. So Sage are a global software giant. They have around 6 million clients all over the world, and they're serviced by 13,000 employees. And we started working with Sage at the beginning of the year when they approached us to transform their disparate group of local blogs into one global content hub with local instances. And amongst their list of objectives was to drive subscriptions and engagement, including social shares and commenting. And this is where, the point where we identified CRO as a good option, to resolve this. We started this process off by creating a CRO audit. Now, this is a pretty hefty document. It dives really deep into what a CRO is, how it works, and we also included some ideas for potential tests and mocked up how these might look, as you can see here. Now, you might think that this is quite a lot of effort at this early stage. The client hasn't even said, yeah, I definitely want to do this. But it was really, really important to us that before they entered into this project with us, that they thoroughly understood what it involved and what it was. So we got Sage's buy-in, and we're already working Agile on other sprints of work with them. So it was kind of the obvious choice for us to run this CRO project in the same way. But that wasn't the only reason. Enterprise-scale CRO projects have a unique set of challenges that the standard CRO model just isn't equipped to deal with. These are things like having multiple stakeholders and sign-off points, and these will usually be people all across the world. Code freezes are quite a common occurrence with enterprise clients. Certain times of the year, they'll decide that you can't make any changes to their website. They also have a huge internal market, and all of these people need to be brought into the project as well. And of course, lots of ongoing sprints of work happening all at the same time. And it can be a bit like sort of spinning plates and, juggling, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it can be quite hard to manage. So this is how we did it. So at the top here, can I get my, sorry. Yeah, at the top here, we've got our standard production sprints. And it's in these 2-week sprints that we'll be doing like continuous cycles of work, implementing new features, bug fixes, etc. And just below here, we've got our 6-week CRO cycle. And I've just demonstrated 3 tests here, but you might have a lot more than that. And this process actually starts before the first sprint at this point, where we ask, can we test it? This is where we're looking at all of that user data. We're talking to our client, finding out, what isn't working for them, what they'd like to see, or which pages they'd like to see more conversions on. And it's from that discussion that we go away and make those test plans. The client will then select the tests that they're happy for us to run. And in sprint 1, we'll start designing, developing, and QAing them. These are like mini production cycles, although I say mini and sometimes, they're really not. If you're running like 5 tests, and CRO tests, if it's scale, like for enterprise clients, are often a lot more complex than standard CRO tests. It can actually take quite a lot of time. And so the client will sign off these tests, and then we ask, we've built it, can we push it live? This might seem like a bit of a weird question. Like, the client has signed off our test plans, they signed off the built test, so why would we now ask this question again? And this is because, like what I mentioned before, code freezes are quite a common occurrence. They might have decided to implement one of these. Businesses of this size have a lot going on. There could be a new marketing initiative happening where it just wouldn't be suitable for our test to run. And actually, a recent example of this happening was we were conducting an experiment on an order form, and we got to this point and we found out that there was another internal team at Sage who were running some form security work. So we couldn't push this test live in the end because it would interfere with the security team's work, and the work that they were doing as well would mean that we probably wouldn't have got reliable results from our tests. So you just put it to the side. Then, in the final 2 sprints, which is the final 4 weeks of the CRO cycle, is when we actually run these tests. And something important to note here is that enterprise-scale CRO tests should never run for more than 4 weeks. The fast-paced nature of these businesses means that they might have product changes, new marketing things going on, that means that if it was to run any longer, your data just would no longer be reliable. It's also worth noting that you might not even get to run your test for those full 4 weeks. Your client's team may request you to pull the tests, and to be honest, this usually happens if the team aren't fully aware of what's going on. When people see things that they're not expecting and they get uncertain, that's when panic sets in. Unfortunately, if this happens, you'll have to start all over again because CRO tests need to run their full cycle. But having that stage before where you ask, we've built it, can we push it live, generally minimizes the chances of this happening. So at the very end of the sprint 3, we say, the data says X, do we implement? And this is when we decide, based on the test results, whether this test should be implemented permanently or not. And this point is when we start again. We go back through to the can we test it stage. And something important to note is that it's not just, once you've conducted a test on one part of the site, that isn't just it. You should continuously, try and optimize it, and along with any new features that have happened, etc. So this is how it looks in action. Not as pretty, I'm afraid, but it works. So on the right-hand side here, we've got our standard production sprint, and on the left, we've got our 6-week CRO process. And you can see these See these little orange arrows here? This is when the two kind of link together. So we've got our in design and in development stages here. As soon as like a test is ready to go in design, it will go through that, the tickets will move through this production sprint. And at the bottom here, if they want to be implemented, again, they go through here. And it works the other way around too. Any new sort of features that have been implemented and we think they'll be good for CRA testing, they'll go through here and then we'll end up back at the top so that we remember to include them in our next iteration of test plans. Easy, right? So CRA Partnership. This process only works if you form a really good partnership with your client. And I mean really good. You can no longer see yourselves as two separate teams. You have to become one. It's vital that you're both on the same page, otherwise it's just not going to work. When you're putting the CRO team together with your client, make sure that everyone has complementary skills and everyone really understands sort of what CRO is. You need to be honest with your client from the outset that sometimes you're just not going to get the results that you desired. Unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows in the world of CRO. Some tests will do the opposite of what you would like, and they'll actually decrease conversions. It's not great, but at least you've learned something. In my opinion, even worse than this is an inconclusive result. If a test is inconclusive, it means that there hasn't been enough conversions on either side for it to really mean anything. And your client needs to understand this and be comfortable with the fact that this might happen. So now I'm going to leave you with a few tips and takeaways, which we've learned not just from working with Sage, but with some other large-scale CRO clients too. Client commitment is key. Every single step of the CRO process, from your test plans to your ideas, relies on the client delivering their part. And to be honest, sticking to specific timescales is going to be near on impossible. But the process that I shared with you before does actually manage this really well. You might have noticed that there was not more than one stage of the CRO process in a single sprint. So we never plan and build in the same sprint. And this is because if the client doesn't deliver their bit on time, we can really easily almost like, pick up that section of work and move it along to another sprint in the future, and it doesn't really disrupt anything else. You'll find that if something goes wrong on your client's site when you're running CRO tests, CRO will more than likely get the blame. This can be really frustrating, but you need to be sensitive to your client, and if this does get escalated to you, respond as soon as you possibly can and be prepared to pull the test if needed. The test data is nowhere near as important as your ongoing client relationship. And I know I've mentioned this a few times now, but be aware of the internal market. I'm not sure if you remember me saying before that Sage has 13,000 employees worldwide, and they all need to know what's going on. If one of our employees who's working on a specific part of the site at which we're running CRO tests on sees the test page and they didn't know about it, that's going to raise alarm bells for them. And you'll more than likely get to the stage before where that people are calling up, asking you to pull tests because they don't know what's going on. So assist your client as much as you possibly can with this process. Be creative in how you communicate those test plans. We've actually decided to kind of ditch the static visuals in our test plans, and we're actually going to create videos to make our test plans a bit more engaging and so that people really, really understand exactly how this works. And finally, it's not always easy, but the results you'll get from running a project like this are so worth it. It will really enhance your relationship with your client. For example, if you have just say you've run a test on an order form and you found that including the phone number field on your order form costs 5% of conversions, you could add this to your library of data that you've been gathering. Then in, say, 3 to 6 months' time, when your client says, oh, on this other section of the website, I'd like to include a phone number field in the order form, can you do this? Like, yeah, absolutely. But did you know that it's actually going to cost you 5% of conversions? Are you comfortable with losing that number of conversions to get that user data? And that puts you in a really strong position, and it will only make your relationship stronger. And that's it from me. That was quite focused on CRO, but if you are interested in Agile, we're actually running a series of free webinars on Agile for enterprise businesses. It's in its really early stage at the moment, so I haven't got like any link to give you, but if you are interested, come and find me, and I'll make sure that you know about it when it does happen. Cool. Thank you very much.